Cassidy.
Oh, hold on.
Here.
Gowdy.
Present.
Hallman.
Present.
America.
Present.
Perlman. Ryan.
Here.
Scanlon. Snow.
Here.
Williams. 6 present.
And for the record, Ms. Williams let us know that she is currently on her way as well. Our information item at this workshop is communications training. The purpose of this workshop is to participate in communications training designed to help strengthen relations amongst board members and improve communication skills. And I will call on Terry Gowdy.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
And I believe that
Monique
Monique
is
is
going
going
to
to
start.
speak first. Thank
I
you.
don't have any microphone, but I did want to just do a brief introduction for Ms. Gowdy. Thank you so much for traveling in to train our OPS Board of Education. Ms. Gowdy is also a school board member, and so she understands a lot of what each of you run into in your world. And
Yes.
so if
Yes.
you remember, we had our communication audit results presented back in July, and one of the recommendations that those auditors had for our district is that we ensure that not only our top level executives on the administration have communication training and media training, but also our Board of Education. And so Ms. Gowdy will provide an overview presentation this morning, and then she'll be working with each of you one-on-one. I've worked with her in a previous role, and like I said, she also trained our administrative cabinet last October. She's worked with communication teams and execs all over the country and all over the world. Some of her clients include GE, Google, United Airlines, and just recently started working also with the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. That's correct, right?
That's correct, yes.
So
yes.
with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over either to Mr. Evans. Did you have anything to add to that?
Just the only thing I'd say is thanks for being here. I know last October when the District Executive Council did their training with you, we all appreciated it, and you gave us valuable feedback and great opportunities for us to grow, so I know the board will have the same experience.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Thank you, Monique. Mark, Monique, thank you very much. And I will start by saying that it is an honor to be with you because I consider myself, above all else, to be a teacher who knows how important it is in every circumstance to help people ask the right questions about their world so that together we can find the best outcomes. Again, my name is Terry Gowdy. We'll be friends by the end of the day because I look forward to really helping each of you in a very relevant and very personalized way because I know you represent different interests and different needs within Omaha Public Schools. I do have a very vast background as a communication coach. I've been doing this for 27 years. I work with the top CEOs in the world today. I work in the top industries. I do a lot of crisis management. When there is a product recall or unfortunately an airline goes down or there perhaps is some sort of a natural disaster, I'm oftentimes asked to come in and help people really communicate in a way that unites people to find solutions. I'm a former journalist. I was with ABC News. My husband is a reporter with ABC News. He's been there 35 years. Spent last week in Las Vegas and can speak to what he witnessed and the importance of communication when something like that happens. And most importantly, I'm a mom. I have 5 fabulous kids, 2 fabulous grandsons, and I like nothing better than to give back to the world of education. Both my personal life as a board member for my school district, but I also work with teachers and textbook editors and a lot of people in tech and ed tech around the world. I couldn't do what I do in today's world without contemporary thinking. So I asked Kaylin Buffalino to join my company 4 years ago, I believe it is. Kaylin, would you introduce yourself to the group, please?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Like Terry mentioned, she asked me to join her a few years ago, but our paths crossed professionally first about 11 years ago when I was driving the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile around the country, which Terry coaches all the hot doggers, as we call ourselves, every year. So I actually spent time here in Omaha when I was on the road, but I was representing the company in a fun way, but also we dealt with all their crisis management issues as well when we were out on the road, as you can imagine. A lot of stuff happens when you drive across the country in a large hot dog. So I felt well prepared with Terry's methods, and then spent 8 years in Chicago working at 2 different PR firms, working with brands like Microsoft, Best Buy, and a number of food commodity groups. So I've covered the gamut, and Terry recognized that and knew I grew up in this social media age. So while we're not going to talk about how to use Twitter and Facebook today, I'm here to show how it has totally changed how we communicate, how we absorb our news, how we read the news, and we apply that to all of our teachings today.
Thank you, Kayla. I appreciate that. And I love the analogy of thinking about how important this is for all of you as board members, because this is what we ask of our teachers and our faculty. We ask them to attend institutes so they can advance their knowledge as the world changes and as we find new innovative ways of educating our children. So much like we ask our teachers and our faculty to continuously be lifelong learners, how good it is for all of you to walk that same walk today. So we will give you a day of value, but we'll also give you some models that you can use to replicate your success moving forward. Together we really can do great things. And the reason this is important, and I believe the reason your auditors wanted you to attend this session, is because, as Kaylin mentioned, the world of communication has changed. You're doing great work. Your teachers are doing great work. Look at those test results. But the world of communication has changed, and we need to change with it. Because without communication, your role cannot create the impact that it deserves. You are the bridge to the community. You are, as board members, you are the bridge to the community. You are out there listening to what the community needs. You get together with your industry knowledge to come up with solutions, and then you communicate them back. You're the bridge. And I don't know about you, but I always have people come up to me at parties and at soccer games because they want to express their concerns. And I'm proud to be a board member. But sometimes those conversations are really hard. We want to help you with that. We want to help you with that today. And here's why what you're going to get from us today is a solution to how the world has changed. It really is a whole new world of communication. I mean, it's very simple. It's too easy to communicate. You know, in today's world, you communicate on your phone, you communicate in a tweet, you write a white paper, something's being read by everybody. It's too easy to communicate. I think it opens up a lot of opportunity, but we have to recognize the challenges. We call it the 3 T's. First of all, nobody knows who to trust. Who are we supposed to trust? Are we supposed to trust the government? Are we supposed to trust the regulators? Who are we supposed to trust? And this is true not only in healthcare and in government and in education. We're confused on who we're supposed to trust. And when you're confused about who to trust, sometimes you don't trust yourself. So it creates anxiety and fear and doubt. But again, that's why today is so important, because truly, the cascade of trust starts with all of you. I respect that you took a pledge of leadership. You took a pledge of leadership. It is mind-boggling to look at all the amazing things that all of you do, and then you dedicate yourself to being board members. That's amazing. So I want the cascade of trust to start with all of you. So what we're going to give you today is a way to talk about the work of the board, to talk about the issues within the public school system in a way that does create trust. You know, I know a lot of times you feel like that you've got to have all the answers and you don't. Remember, the questions don't stop with you. The questions start with you. The questions start with you. Number 2, it's a world of Twitter. As Kaylin said, everybody's speaking in 140 characters or less. And that makes life difficult because you want to be robust in your information. You can't put a bond out for vote unless you've talked about it in a robust way. Yet people are listening in a Twitter mind. Just give it to me at the top. That's hard. That's hard. We're going to show you how to find a solution to that. How do you communicate on these deep, complex issues in a way that meets the way people are now listening for their information? How do you do that? We're going to show you. And remember, the question doesn't stop with you. The question starts with you. And the third thing we need to think about is the world we live in. In today's world, the classroom has no walls. Everything you say, everything you do, everything you write is instantly being read by all the people that you impact. And again, we see that as an amazing opportunity. Every time you speak to someone, you have a chance to teach and help them come to terms and better understand what we're dealing with. Every time. But how do you do that in a way that's consistent and trustworthy? And I know a few of you said to me in your questionnaires, help me with those impromptu moments. Well, we're going to do that today. So this is why today is valuable. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's not that, we need a completely different way of communicating. It's that the world has changed. And as teachers, I want all of you to be the best you can be so we can all serve that person I'm thinking about right now, that student. That's the common hero here. So here's how we're going to do it. We're going to first and foremost have a conversation on how I can help you. Then we're going to share with you some best practices, and Kayla and I will show you some examples from real life, stories maybe you've seen in the news. Then we're going to give you a model, a methodology, a 5-step method that you can use every day to prepare in 2 minutes or less. And my model can be used for your presentations, your meetings, your media interviews, how you write your emails. How can you use communication to add clarity and context to the issues we're dealing with here in Omaha? Then we're going to help you, each of you, figure out what is my platform, what's my core story. And when you are out in the community and you get an unexpected question or you have a chance to have an important conversation, you have to be able to tell your story in a solid way. So we'll help you build that out together, and then we'll also help you practice that and use that platform when you do get questions about some of these tough things that we read about on Facebook or on Twitter. You want to make sure that you are giving people the information they need, but in a way that links them back to your vision, And then we'll also show you how to create what we call the ultimate 1-minute elevator pitch. When I worked with Mark, I said, Mark, what if you had 1 minute to really tell the story of the Omaha Public Schools? What would you say and how would you say it? And he did it in a remarkable way, in his voice, in a sincere, authentic way, but in a way that really sweeps the audience into the solution. If the people, if the parents and the students, the teachers who live in Omaha, if they understand what role they play in your solution, together, we can really do great things. But they have to see what role they play and where they fit in this world. And those are some of the strategies we're going to share with you today. So let's talk about how we can help. If we could just quickly do a round table. I know some of you wrote these to me, which was great, but I'd love us to have a common cause. Good morning, Yolanda. How are you? Do you mind if I start with you a little bit? I'm Terry Gowdy. This is Kaylin Buffalino. So a little bit about what you've done in the past in terms of your communication experience, what you'd like to work on today. This is a really important question for all of us, and I choose my words very carefully. What is the most important idea, not message? We don't memorize messages when we go to a dinner party. As a board, you share ideas. What's the most important idea that you would like to teach, not tell? It's not about telling people. It's about being a teacher. And this is very important, the value that we're creating in the Omaha Public Schools. And I know each of you probably have your own way of defining that with your leadership voice. I saw some of that in your bios, but I want to pull that out and help you work on that, because again, that's what we want to do. We want to lead with ideas. And then the last thing, I know that there are a number of different issues that are at play right now within Omaha Public Schools. Kayla and I went back and read some of the recent articles that have been written by your local reporters. We also asked Monique to help us with this a little bit, but we also want to know what it is that you want to focus in on today. You know, it's probably some of the more complex issues. When issues are complex, sometimes it's hard to explain it to the public. We want to help you with that, again, with some models that we have. So Yolanda, you've done, you give presentations, done media. What kind of communication experience do you have?
Dive a little bit deeper into
So in your everyday life and in your background, you give presentations, I would imagine? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I public speak.
Yes.
I work with our communications director. I do communications at work.
Good.
So communications is a huge part of my daily life.
Fantastic. What would you say works well for you as a communicator? What have you found really helps you when you're communicating and trying to create an impact with an audience? Do you have any things that have really worked for you over the years?
I mean, it's up to me. It's as long as I'm speaking about something I believe in or something that I'm
Perfect.
working on or working towards. It has to be something that I'm familiar with. If it's not
Exactly.
something I'm familiar with, like going first.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was actually going to defer to board leadership. As the leaders, they should have started first and set the example for us.
Yeah.
However, so it's just a part of my
Yeah.
daily life.
I think what you said, Yolanda, about something you believe in is so important. That's why in your sessions with us, your breakout sessions, we're going to help you make sure you're always putting things in your own voice, because sincerity and authenticity is incredibly important. Incredibly important. Is there anything, Yolanda, that you wanted to learn today or you wanted to work on other than what I've already offered to the team?
Not necessarily, or not at this moment. And
You bet.
maybe as we have more conversations,
Yeah,
something will
that's
come
fine.
up.
No worries. In terms of what you do believe in, and the most important thing, you want people to better understand about the value we're creating. What would be your thoughts on that? What do you believe is most important for all of us in terms of the kind of value that we have the potential of creating?
Well, I believe the value that we're creating is the value of our future through our young people, and that's what drives me. That's the most important thing for me. And when that no longer is a part of the occasion, then count me out, because I'm not interested in not having a conversation if it's not about, I don't care about the politics. I don't care about the status or the role. I care about making a difference for students, and it's something that I do in my professional life as well, so
Yes.
that's always going to be there.
Yes.
So for me, if it's not related to kids, I'm checked out, because it's
Well
not relevant.
said. Well said. Are there any particular issues that you want to make sure that we do cover in our sessions today that you're having trouble either explaining or speaking about from the board's point of view?
I would say no.
Okay.
I think my challenge is that we're not talking about what's best for kids more.
Got it.
We're talking about everything except for what's best for kids.
Yeah.
And until we can start having that conversation,
Yeah.
This role isn't, I'm not doing what I was elected to do.
Got it.
And so that's where I believe I have challenge with communication, because
Yes.
if we're not talking about those kids.
Yes.
Because that's what the kids are asking. That's what the families are asking.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking about their kids every day in our schools.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not leading that conversation, what's our role?
We are going to show a video clip in a few minutes that's going to speak directly to what you just said, and I hope you really enjoy it, because it's going to be a perfect example of not only how to do that, but why we must do that, especially for some of the most mystifying issues that we deal with today. So I hope to satisfy that need for you in just a few minutes. Thank you so much. And thank you for going first. I always go clockwise, that's why. Shyvana, how about for you, please? Your communication experience. You also do a lot of public speaking, correct?
Not by choice.
I love your
I
candor.
do for my job.
Yes, right.
I guess when I worked in OPS as a teacher and as an administrator,
Yes.
I didn't have any issues with
Right.
speaking to staff or students or parents or anything
Yes.
like that, just because of the relationships that I already had with them. But
Yeah.
so I have to do a lot of presentations for my job in higher ed. I don't particularly care too much for public speaking.
Okay.
I hear that I always do well, but I go through a whole panicky process prior to, and so I have to be completely prepared
Yeah.
in what I will be
Right.
speaking about. I think because I'm more nervous about what people are thinking about
Yes.
me speaking
Yes.
versus me just speaking, if that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I was painfully shy as a child. I mean, so shy, my parents worried about me in the playground. And I had to find strategies and techniques to really get through that in order to be a journalist. And in our life, we work with so many different scientists and engineers that are introverted by nature, yet their story is so important, and we have to help them tell that story, because they're working in oncology, and they're working in aerospace, and they're working in aviation. We have to help them get through that. So we're going to give you an example as well of how you can not only take that adrenaline, that nervousness within you, and create something good and something lasting, but we also have some other techniques you can use to formulate your content in a way that is so memorable that even if you're a little uncomfortable at the beginning, no one cares, nor will they remember. And I know your story is so rich with that as well. So we have some wonderful things I think you're going to appreciate very much. Can we go down to the idea you'd like to teach? So when you think about why you wanted to be a member of this board and why you've dedicated your life to things you have, similar to what Yolanda said, what would you say in your own voice is the most
Well,
important thing we're trying to create here?
What she said is exactly what I emailed you.
Yes, right.
My passion, my background has always only been about children.
Yes.
I knew from the time I was a kid that I was going to work with kids, I was going to be a teacher. And so that's what I drive from. That's
Yeah.
my motivation.
Yes.
And being on this board, that's just my motivation, and speaking on behalf of my experiences in working with children and working with families and knowing what's good and what's best for them. And that's the only thing that matters to me.
I love it. I love the purity of that. Thank you. Any particular issues or questions you want to make sure that we help you with today? I know you put a little bit of that, I think, in your questionnaire as
I
well.
did.
Yeah.
I think just for us right now as a board, I think right now the toughest questions that we're facing obviously is about the bond and our
Right.
superintendent search.
Yes.
And we have some high priority things going on right now. And
Yes.
so I think those are the questions that we are,
Yes.
as a board, trying to focus on
Very
and making
good.
sure that we're communicating as one out to the public.
As one and in a clear way.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Because when you're talking about a bond, it's so confusing for people, and they get lost in the complexity. And as teachers, I want you, again, to be helping people not only understand how the process works, but understand, why we take the time we do to answer those questions. So we're going to help you with clarity and context today for some of those tough issues. Ultimately, when you hear a board member speak about issues like going for a bond, you want people in their own homes to be able to tell the story for you. So we want to be able to speak in a way that's transferable, so people can ask themselves the right questions in the community because they've understood the story from you, the leader. And that's what the models will do to help all of you. Tracy, if you'd be so kind, you want to take it from the top?
Which one?
So experience, what works, and what you'd like to work on.
Okay, well, I use communication, like both of these ladies, pretty
Yes.
much in my everyday life.
Yes.
I work in HR, so everybody comes to me. I always feel sometimes like I'm the bartender because I have people come to me for things I
Cheers,
don't want to
Norm.
know. But I do. I did a lot of, right out of college, I actually had a job where I went around to high schools and did presentations. So a lot of times, I feel a little bit rusty because that was years ago.
Yes.
But I always take it back to, if I could do that in front of high school kids, I could speak in front of anyone. So I do a lot of presentations at work, benefits, and just dealing with my employees day to day. So that's definitely.
We do a lot of work with, we do a lot of work with like NFL athletes who do
Yes.
programs like Field to Play 60. And when we're training the quarterbacks, when you think these are the most confident men you ever met, they will tell you that when they go into the schools, do these programs, it's a much tougher audience than on Sunday in the football stadium.
Yes.
You got to have your A game. You got to be relevant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And when I spoke at high schools, it was primarily a lot of classrooms. It was usually technology classrooms, so it was primarily males.
Yeah.
I was right out of college, and I mean, I quit wearing skirts. I was just
Yeah.
like, okay, we're going to do this professionally and
Yes.
not listening.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
I always
great.
feel like I can make it through anything if I made it through that.
I believe you could, my friend.
Yeah.
Yes. Is there anything you'd like to learn today to do better? Anything you'd like to learn from us?
Probably just brush up on speaking in public. I
Yes.
haven't done a lot of that yet with the board, but I know
Yes.
that is a
Yes.
role that we definitely play. I attended a community forum with Lacey a while back,
Yeah.
and so that was kind of felt like that was my first
Yes.
really speaking in front of public, and
good.
I'll tell you what, they had some tough questions.
Yeah.
They really did.
Yeah.
To number 5 then, the toughest questions, I just think as a new board member, I'm playing catch up and I'm trying to learn everything,
Yes.
the bond, superintendent search,
Yes.
just soak it all in so that I am able to answer questions,
Yes.
you know,
And
completely.
just, Tracy, the mindset is really important for you as a newer board member. It's not, sometimes it probably feels like these are your oral exams and you have to have all the answers, but that's not true.
It's impossible.
The question doesn't stop with you, the question starts with you. And that mindset's going to really help you not only navigate through these issues, but it's also going to help you actually have better relationships. Because people get frustrated when they think that you have the answer and you don't. We need to have them understand that together we're going to find the answer.
Absolutely.
And we're going to show you another wonderful opening video clip where the head of a major pharmaceutical company really took a wrong turn for the good because she didn't understand that the conversation is a chance for you together to find the answers, not like a legal deposition. Yeah, cool stuff. So
absolutely.
number 4, I'd be interested to hear why did you want to be a board member? What do you really believe in your heart? What is the idea you want to teach?
Ditto to these two
Good.
ladies.
Good.
I have 3 children of my own.
Yes.
2, 3 soon
Yes.
to be in the district, but
Yeah.
that was my motivation for
Yes.
wanting to get on the board. It's about the students. It's about keeping this district number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Keep doing positive things that will educate and take our students into the future. I mean, my youngest is 4, so I've got a lot of years left in this district, and
Yes.
I want to see it continue to grow and be the best district it can be.
Absolutely.
That's my motivation, plain and simple.
And we would like you to know, because we go to schools and universities and, we train deans all around the country. A lot of what you're doing here in Omaha is pretty remarkable nationally in terms of urban models.
Absolutely.
And we talked to Mark about that a bit. You should be really proud of that. I know sometimes you only see as far as the borders of Omaha, but you should be really proud. A lot of what you are doing here is pretty extraordinary.
It is.
It's almost a model for urban education. So think about that today and be proud. And we hope to give you that kind of outside-in perspective and what's happening in other places and the kinds of issues others are dealing with, so you can really communicate yours in the best way possible. Thank you, Tracy. Go Cubs. Mark, how about for you, please?
Absolutely.
So I know you also do a tremendous amount of public speaking, both in your personal life and your professional life, correct?
Yes. What kind of experience do I have? obviously, my entire life has always been dealing with communication,
Yes.
even working with the YMCA and political campaigns.
Yes.
You have to be a communicator, and you have to be out there in front of people, and you
Yes.
have to have a consistent message.
Yes.
So they don't get confused on what you're trying to articulate. What I do well as a communicator, I'm very likable, so I try with a lot of the he laughs. What I try to do, I mean, one of the things is when you communicate with people is try to really not just talk to them, but really get on their level to kind of understand where they're coming from and hear them out. And believe it or not, the young men and women that I mentor and work with, and the kids that I see every day, is just mostly hearing them out. And most of the times is a very good communicator is a very good listener. So.
Yeah, good, thank you. I love your energy as well. And you can tell by your body language that you've done a lot of great communication.
Yes.
You're doing a lot of things right.
Well, I try.
Is there anything you want to work on today, Mark? Is there anything you'd like to work on to learn to do better? In the name of excellence?
I don't know. I would say I have a beautiful face, but sometimes when I'm listening, people just look at me as if I'm not interested, but I am interested. So really try to nod and smile the entire time.
Okay. Very
So
good.
I don't know how do you do that? What is
Beautiful
that?
face.
I don't know how to.
You
I am beautiful. It's the it's
Well,
my
he has a lot of
it's my.
You
I do a lot of like
self-esteem.
yeah. I don't know. I do a lot of squinting, so I try not to do it as much.
Okay.
I don't know how to.
We'll give you a
it just
very
doesn't come
honest
off as-
read on that. That's why we're the objective feedback. We'll give you an honest read on
I
that.
call it the Shyvana Moment. She's probably one of the best people I know that just always has a beautiful smile on her face, and
Okay. All right.
I want to be that.
We'll take you there.
All right.
Let's talk about the idea you'd like to teach. What do
Why
you want to teach
why
about
to
the
join
value
school
we're
board?
creating?
I ran for the school board for the same reason as these three ladies here, and majority of the people that run for school boards, is to serve my community. When I moved here, I realized the community I was living with, and it had students that were checking out and families that did not feel like their voice was heard. So one of the things that I want to do was make their school board member someone that they can reach out and talk to. And many of the kids that I see and the kids that I work with every day is one of those things is how can I come into a situation and help them get and achieve the goals that I was able to achieve in a public education world. And one of the things for me that just makes it very exciting is that the fact that I am someone that when they reach out to me, I'll be there. I'll be there to help them. If there's a parent having a complaint or anything like that, Mr. Evans knows, I get on that because that was one of the things that I see in my community is always like, every time we have an issue, we need someone to kind of help us and help the district see the needs that we need in our
Absolutely.
community.
The bridge,
So,
the bridge, beautiful.
The
Any particular
connector.
issues, Mark, that you want to talk about today with us, or things that you need some help with in terms of how to best answer?
I'll probably develop them as we go
Okay,
through the
very good.
process.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Lacey?
Okay. I was actually on the newspaper staff when I was in high school.
Yay!
I don't know if Aaron knew that or not. I have been doing essentially presentations for groups and at conferences since I was in high school.
Wow, great.
I don't, let's see. Well, and then obviously through my job too, I have to represent our college
Yes.
to like prospective students, students who are thinking about coming into the university. So going out and meeting and talking to them. And then obviously as a board member, we get ambushed sometimes by media and have to do interviews with them. What do I do well? I do not prepare things when I speak.
Okay.
I generally have an idea and then just kind of extemp it out from there.
Does that work for you, Lacey?
It does.
Good. Okay.
I don't know if that's a factor of the people that have been role models and mentors for me, because I've noticed they all tend to do that too, but I'm very much have an idea in your head,
Yes.
go from there.
Yes.
Things that I think I could do better, I do say a lot, and I'm trying to work on that.
Okay.
Monique says sometimes I make interesting faces. She nods.
Okay.
So definitely that, and handling you mentioned at the beginning, the unexpected questions and
Yes.
how to handle that, how to turn that into the response that you want to give to that type of question. I also talk with my hands, and sometimes it's very big.
Gestures are good, but we're going to give you
But
some,
big
we're going to give you,
gestures are
we're going to give
not
everybody one
jazz
simple
hands.
tip to make sure that your gestures, your body language, and your voice are always appropriate. It's one simple tip. We'll get that to you in a few minutes. I want to speak to something you said earlier. I got an email overnight from one of our clients saying, oh, I've got to get our CEO ready for a TED Talk. I need a speechwriter. And I said, no. You don't want a speechwriter for a TED Talk. A TED Talk is conversational. That's not what you need. You need storyboarding. So, Lacey, the way that you have been trained to speak, extemporaneously, conversational, short declarative sentences, and I'm hearing that already in your voice, that's exactly where the world is going. So you do have that advantage. The key would be to think to yourself when you are getting ready to speak, even in your own mind as you're driving over, am I true to my message? Am I true to our vision? Am I true to that student we have yet to serve? So if you've got some guardrails to make sure that you are true to your purpose, speaking extemporaneously is fine, but you've got to make sure, again, that you always pretend that sitting right in front of you in every conversation is a student you have yet to serve. And think about my sentence. Sitting right in front of you in every single conversation is a student you have yet to serve. Not the ones we're serving now, they're important, but it's a student you have yet to serve because that's about growth. So that's going to help all of you in terms of attitude, mood, and content. Pretend sitting right in front of you is a student you have yet to serve. And you know what? That's what I'm doing right now. Lacey, any questions, issues you want to make sure we cover today in terms of things that we're facing as a board moving forward?
I think I said it too, I hope we all ran for the board to serve students.
Yes.
And for me specifically, I represent the area where I grew up and the schools that I went to, and there has always been a feeling in our community of being left behind. And so I wanted to make sure that their voice was being represented and that their concerns were being addressed and heard.
Do you think, Lacey, if I'd be so kind, because this is a story this is a thought I want to take a little bit further, because, all of you have those great stories of either, this is where I grew up, like for Matt, he came back. So this is where I grew up, this is the life I live, this is the mission I have. You got to help people understand what the value of that is. So what is the value to the people we're serving based upon the fact that you are true and loyal to the place that you grew up? What kind of inherent value does that offer to the people in your community? What does that give them that they wouldn't have without you?
I think in my situation, it does give them more trust because they know if they bring a problem to me, I am going to follow up on it.
Yes.
If they're concerned about their school or something specific,
Yes.
I'm not going to turn around and turn them in, if you will.
No, I know.
To get them in trouble because of something they saw that was going on.
Gotcha.
Because they've
Yes.
known me since I was a year old.
Yes. So I think, and we're going to help each of you kind of flesh it out a little bit further in terms of the value proposition of the life you're leading and how that impacts people. For those of you that have dedicated your life to children and to the place you grew up and to the cause you believe in, you got to maybe add a couple of sentences so people understand what that value is really all about. I mean, I think of you as a trusted family member. When you grow up together, you may be miles apart, but you know that nobody has your best interest like the person you grew up with. So we need to make sure people really understand that because that is so much the building block of all of your stories. Thank you, Lacey. I appreciate
problem.
that. Mark, you have quizzed you before. Anything you want to add to that? Yeah.
And I know
Yeah.
I'm kind of auditing our experience, but just as a reminder to the group of, one, again, thank you for the board's willingness to participate in this. I think that's critical. Two, sometimes we think the challenges today are new, and I would remind everybody again that back in December of 2012 when I was hired, I was coming in on the heels of a failed soup search. I was coming in on the heels, and you were too, as board members, the ones that came in. We had a lot of controversy. You had a superintendent payout scandal that became legislative action. You had nearly a decade and a half of unmet bond issue needs that hadn't been touched or addressed. You had student achievement that was fairly stagnant. You had 11 schools identified by the state of Nebraska as persistent low achieving schools. And all of those things are different today. You passed a bond issue 2-to-1 that made a difference in schools that had window units hanging outside the classrooms, 19 of them. You replaced keys with door badges that are much more secure and renovated schools that many of you have now been to those dedication activities. Those 11 persistent low achieving schools from 5 years ago now show double-digit gains. So, and I could go on and on, from bumps in the road that we've had with standards-based grading that now is going quite well, and this is the first year of a new system, to a student assignment plan that came from a strategic plan that went off without a hitch today. I have to always give Mr. Ray credit for that too, and certainly Ms. Gowdy as well, and others, but Mr. Ray always makes sure he points out that I don't give him credit for that, so I'll share that
It's on
today
the
as
record
well.
now.
It's on the record. I'm not sure why that's so important to him, but he always is critical of me. But I guess my point of this story is, this is my 37th year in education. There's always challenges. And we know even last year we had some challenges. We had some bumps in the road. Some of you may remember a bus driver shortage that created a bit of energy and media coverage. We had a few other challenges with sixth grade transition that there are some things, if I had that to do over again, I would do it over, and we are doing it over differently for Beverage as they transition this next year with sixth graders with their bond work done. But I guess I never want to lose track of that, and that's part of my elevator pitch. Every time I speak to community groups, every time I'm ambushed by community leaders, and that's common. I mean, that's all the time. I always share with folks, we're better today than we were yesterday, and we're going to be better tomorrow than we are today, and I believe it.
Yes.
And then you need to be prepared to give the evidence of the improvement. If you say you're better, why are you? And you should have a list in your mind that you can rattle on, depending on who you're talking to, because someone wants to know more about bond issue improvement. Someone wants to know about low-performing schools. Someone wants to know about equity issues and what you're doing in that regard. Someone wants to know about student achievement in general, graduation rates, which, by the way, we're the #2 large urban district in the United States of America, which is something to be proud of. I know this isn't my time to list off my list, so I'll stop at that.
You're actually proving a point for me, so thank you. Go ahead. Yeah.
But I appreciate everyone being here, because it is always a challenge, and sometimes we forget that we had these challenges before, and we also forget that we've made progress. So I think that's really important to remember as we look at the current issues that are in front of us, that we can overcome these too.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Mark. Amanda, for you, please. What kind of communication experience do you have?
So my communication experience
Yeah.
is a little bit different, because I'm used to doing more like, if I am doing presentations, it's more like research-based
Right.
presentations.
Right.
So it's like presenting my research or different things more in academia.
Yes.
So this is something that I'm definitely getting used to and learning how to communicate better as more of a public speaker than, I guess, researchy type stuff. Something that I do well as a communicator. So I think it's really important that we have both ends of that communication spectrum.
Yes.
So like the people
Yes.
that are verbalizing, but
Yes.
then also the people who are listening.
Yes.
And I do that a lot, and that's how I process information, is through listening. So I like to take in a lot of that. I would like to learn how to better articulate my ideas while they're happening at the board table. So I
okay.
think that's one thing,
Okay.
because I do listen so much
Yes.
that I have to have that time to kind of think about everything,
Yes,
and
yes.
then those afterthoughts come.
Yes.
But it's kind of like not the right place in the conversation to then bring them back up, or we've moved on to a different issue. So that's something that I would like to work better on.
And I have a mental formula you can use to make that happen. And I also have some body language tips you can use so that people know you do have a point you want to make, so you're not left behind in the conversation. Yeah.
So, like Lacey said, I think all of us did run because we care about children, we care about education.
Yes.
One of the other things that I ran on, whether it wasn't really explicitly stated, but was empathy and being able to like tell stories that aren't heard. So that goes into my own personal background of, I know several of us, I think, are first generation college graduates and stuff like that. I am a Latina, and so being able to like show my story and have other students connect with that story is something that I think is really important. And then that empathy piece, making sure that we all know that we come to this with different backgrounds and we have a story to tell too.
All right, I'm going to ask you a question, put you on the spot a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Because to Mark's point, when I worked with his team a year ago, today I can still remember 3 really substantial things. I remember comparisons. I remember highest test scores in 20 years, passed the bottom effort from 2 to 1. Who could do that? What school district in the country could do that? We're installing technology that rivals the top companies in Omaha. You remember those kind of things. What do you think, Amanda, is the secret behind the success of the Omaha Public Schools? What is the secret of this district? Why is it working here?
I always go to the diversity in our students.
Okay.
Like, I think that
Okay.
for that, like, that's my number one, and I'm really proud that we do have that diversity.
And why,
across
link the
district.
diversity, if you be so, and I'm putting you on the spot, but this, I want people to start thinking this way. Why does the diversity of the Omaha Public Schools yield the success that we're seeing? What does that do?
It creates a difference in viewpoints and experiences, and
Yes.
I think that helps for growth.
Got it.
Yeah.
Perfect, done. Great, there's your tweet, 140 characters. Thank you. Any
Yes.
particular issues you want to discuss today?
I think navigating conflict, how
Okay.
to best talk about that
Yes.
with other parties.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. Conflict's challenging, but again, we have some strategies how you turn that into a more productive conversation. Very good, excellent. Louanne, bring it home for me. Tell me what you've done.
Well, I think as far as communication, goodness, I've had a lot of opportunity over the last 3.5 years to do far
Yes.
more public speaking than I ever did
Yes.
prior to that.
Yes.
Before that, I was more dealing with maybe technical aspects, employee issues, that
Yes.
sort of thing.
Yes.
So I've had the opportunity, I think, to do quite a bit of that, done a lot of radio, which is a little bit of sometimes a challenge, but
Really? A lot of people like radio.
Yeah, and I think it's better that you're not seeing everyone. I think maybe that, or they can't see you. Maybe
Yeah,
that's
right.
maybe that's the good
Yeah.
thing. So I had a lot of wonderful opportunities to
Yes.
communicate the story of
Yes.
OPS.
Good, wonderful. Is there anything you'd like to work on today you'd like to learn to do better?
So I think when I think about that, one of the things, those impromptu moments.
Yes, right.
Was what I wrote
remember you wrote
in
that.
my
Right.
comments back
Right.
to you, because I think sometimes when you're caught off guard with a topic you are unfamiliar with, or you've just never seen, I can think about one case where I'd never seen a document that
Right.
was shoved in front of me
Right.
while on camera.
Right.
You're kind of saying, wow, I don't know. I'll have to look into that.
Right,
and
exactly.
Is there a better way to respond to that?
And we'll help you with
So-
some triage language, and when something like that happens, especially when you're on camera, we'll give you some triage language on how you can best manage that moment in a way that's true to who you are and your beliefs.
Right.
We'll help you with all of that,
So,
yeah.
Very good.
What is the idea that you'd like the world to hear in terms of the value that we're creating every day in the Omaha Public Schools?
So I think when I think about OPS, I always think when I'm communicating not to hurt the brand and keep who we are true to the students. So I think it's about ensuring that people know that no matter where our test scores are today, students are achieving in a way that they hadn't before,
Yes.
that we're able to provide opportunities to kids today that they didn't maybe have yesterday,
Right.
and that we're getting better and better at what we're doing. And that's an important thing, I think, that we have to remember, because we can easily be attacked for, oh, your achievement isn't all that high, but here's some things you need to think about. And when you get done with that, hopefully the comments that come back are, oh, you really are doing well.
Exactly.
And that always makes me feel good when someone says, they have the aha moment.
Right. It's the I've never thought about it that way
Right.
before. It's the now I know what questions to ask. It's the I'm going to think about this differently moving forward. Thank you, Louanne. Those are the kind of comments you want to hear.
Right.
The ahs. Nice long ahs.
Yeah.
Any tough questions you want to put on our list?
Well, I mean, we've already talked about superintendent
Right,
search
right.
and bond.
Yes.
And I think we're going to have, we'll certainly have some financial issues.
Yes.
Going forward, we'll probably have some
Yes.
challenging legislative
Yes.
components that
Yes.
come up in the
Yes.
next year as well.
Very good. Excellent. Matt, anything you want to add to the conversation? And again, I thank you for all you've done to make this meeting happen today.
I have a lot of responses to Mr. Snow, but no, I'm good.
Thank you.
The mic was taken away from me.
All right, fasten your seatbelts. Here we go. So the challenge you're all facing is that on a daily, hourly, minute-by-minute basis, you are trying to create a future that people can't yet see. And there couldn't be anything more challenging. You're creating a future people can't yet see. And all of us, our human nature is that we're all afraid of what we don't know. We're all afraid of the dark. We're all afraid of change. You know this, Tracy, from an HR point of view. You know, when we are working with companies that are downsizing or M&A or moving to Chicago like ConAgra did, you have fear because people are always afraid of what they can't see, what they don't know. And many of the issues you work on as a board are very mystifying. They're complex and they're mystifying. So the challenge you face as leaders is that oftentimes you're creating a future that people can't yet see. They can see what a new high school would look like. They've seen the schematic, but they can't see the process it takes to get there. So they can see what the school's going to look like. Yeah, I want that. But they can't see the process it takes to get there. So what if we could help them visualize the process in a way that mitigates that fear, mitigates the confusion? Well, that's why we're here. That is exactly why we're here today. So we're going to start with an example that shows you what happens in today's world if you don't understand what I just said. If you don't understand that in life, people are afraid. They're afraid for their children's future. They're afraid for where their money's going. They're afraid what the future looks like. What if we could understand why they are fearful and use communication to help them manage that fear into something productive? What if we could do that? What happens if you don't? Kaylin, let's show them a clip from Mylan, please.
Pharmaceuticals. And a couple of years ago, you might have seen that Mylan, the company that makes EpiPens, they increased the price of EpiPens almost 300-fold without a real solid explanation why. So the first interview we watched is their CEO, her name's Heather, and it's with CNBC, so it's a business reporter, and this was her opportunity to go and teach and to tell the story of why they had to increase the price, but also to shine a light on the great work that her company's doing. But as you'll see, she didn't have any structure to what she was going to say. She probably memorized a few message points and then did the interview. So we'll watch the interview and then we'll talk about maybe where she went wrong and where she could have strengthened her story.
First, as I put out today, just to try to help, because I know this is a complicated conversation around healthcare and insurance, that the $600 is a list price, that $608 is a list price. What Mylan takes from that, our net sales is $274, so $137 per pen. And against that, manufacturing the product, distributing the product, enhancing the product, investing. When we took over this product 8 years ago, there was very, very little awareness. We have doubled the lives of patients that are carrying an EpiPen. We have passed legislation in 48 states to allow undesignated EpiPens to be in schools. And what that means, there has been unfortunate, tragic events, like a 7-year-old in Virginia who died on the schoolyard because the school had EpiPens but not in her name. So we thought that takes time and resources to get out there and make sure that people are aware of the issues and that people understand that EpiPens need to be everywhere. I said it's just like a defibrillator. When you are having a severe allergic reaction, you need EpiPen in seconds.
But surely, Heather, you must understand the outrage. As somebody I've talked to last night said, people are outraged because it seems outrageous that the American Medical Association has said, this is basically the same product it was in 2009, and yet the price has gone up 300 or 400 fold.
So, look, no one's more frustrated than me. I've been in this
But
business
you're the
for
one
25
raising the
years.
price, so how can you be frustrated?
My frustration is there's a list price of $608. There is a system.
That's enough. Kaylin? Yeah.
What we teach is that the power of a story can really be measured by how easily you can go out and repeat it. So what was Heather's story that she was trying to tell?
That we need EpiPens, we have to have EpiPens for people that have allergic reactions that save lives.
Mm-hmm. But did she say they save lives?
Yes, not. Wait, that's not.
Yeah.
But imagine if that's the first thing she would have said. If she would have started with EpiPen saves lives. It's hard to argue that. It could have changed maybe the whole tone of the direction of where the interview went. Right. But instead she went right into the numbers, which the graphic was quite confusing. I don't know if I've seen it many times and I still don't fully understand it. So what else could she have been teaching us? For me, there just seemed to be a lack of empathy. There was no, patient stories. There was no, sure, Mark.
So testimonials is what we do at the YMCA a lot. And when you have a moment to tell a story and give a testimonial, you have to attach it to whatever you're trying to sell or put up. And she gave this testimony from this child in Virginia, but didn't correlate why the price was going up.
Right. She kind of blamed the school.
Yeah, blamed the school. It's like, that's why we're moving the price. So you had this moment to really give this testimonial and show why you are needed in the community, and you botched it. I mean,
Right. Right, and it's so important. I'm sure there's parents that work with her and help create EpiPen whose own children have to use that. So perhaps that was another direction she could have taken it, talking about the technology and the people behind the value of the EpiPen, because that's really what it is. It's a value story. That's a great point.
Well, and on the text that was going on the bottom, there was a statement about the fact that Mylan was increasing their cost-cutting things for people who assumably had financial issues with affording the increased price. And she didn't say anything about that. She could have totally said, we understand this is an increased expense. Because of that, we are increasing our programs to increase access for people with limited financial resources, but there was none of that.
Yes.
Exactly.
Right, and instead we're left, wondering, like you said, where's that money going? Why did you increase the price? Because she never really answered that big question. And if she would have had the structure that we're going to talk about today, you'll see she could have easily addressed that.
So there was no visualization. Instead of treating it defensively, I'm going to defend my budget, she should have pretended that sitting right in front of her was the child she has yet to help. And if she had pretended sitting right in front of her was the child and the parent she's yet to help, she would have had a far different tone and a far different outcome. And I want to speak to the point about EpiPen saving lives. In today's world, people judge your priorities based on the very first thing you say. And in today's world, the first thing you say tells people what you consider to be most important. And sometimes we don't put the most important thing at the top. Sometimes it's because we're accountants. Sometimes it's because we're scientists and we're used to putting the conclusion at the end. But what we're going to ask all of you to learn to do today as leaders, to really strengthen leadership voice, is just take a second and put the most important thing at the very beginning of what you're going to say. Yolanda, I was very impressed. Because when I said to you, even though you were the first one, and I said to you, what's your message? What do what's the idea you want to teach? Boom, you had it. And if you start with that, if you start with that purity, people will trust you. So if she had stopped and said, first and foremost, let me start with the most important point. EpiPen saves lives. And we need to work together to make sure that every child who needs the EpiPen has it. Let me explain to you what we're doing. Completely different outcome. But instead, I think she had memorized her message points, and she just spit them out. There was no context. There was no clarity. Now I'm more confused. It's hard enough to understand what a PBM does and drug pricing. It's one of the most confusing stories in our country right now. She made it worse. But we're going to make it better. So here's what we would have taught Heather. We would have taught Heather that first and foremost, you need to be a teacher. All of us. A teacher is someone who can walk into any room, any situation, and help people ask the right questions. That's what we ask of his board members. Help people ask the right questions so together we can take the steps necessary to do what's best for those students in their future. But if people don't know what questions to ask, now you have a sea of confusion. A sea of confusion. So we want to help people ask the right questions as teachers. And we want to make sure we understand that what people really want in education is personal, and it's really emotional. We want people to get the very best information possible, but they have to hear it in a way that's relevant to them. You know what people are asking when they listen to you? 3 questions. So what? Who cares? How does this affect me? And if we can start with the piece that addresses that, now you've got context and clarity. Now you've got trust. So we're going to show you how important it is to always think of yourself as teachers, not as spokespeople. And what that means is very simple. One of the most important things we're going to teach you today is to put the why before the how. It's easy to tell people how we're doing things, but it's why it matters that has to lead the bandwagon. Number 2, it's about tone. We are what we feel. We want to make sure that we're using the right words, we're using the right body language to communicate the tone. You seem to be a very determined group of people, very purposeful. We want your purposeful nature to come across as caring, not as defense. And when Aaron quotes one of you in the board meeting, sometimes when you take something out of context of a conversation, if you're not using the right words and how you speak, it may not come across the right way. You want to make sure that in your quotes, you're not using negative language. You're not telling people what you're not. You're telling them what you are. So you want to make sure that you're thinking about the kind of positive language that we're hearing today, even when you're in a difficult moment. Because the words you use, that really is what your brand is all about. Apple, I'll give you 3 words. Apple makes me feel happy, creative, and inspired. Microsoft makes me feel a little old. So how do you want people to feel about who you are and your brand? You have beautiful language in your bios. Beautiful language. Each of you in your bios, I understand what your personal brand is all about. Is that how you're speaking in your board meetings? Is that how you're speaking in public? Number 3, it is about connecting the dots for people. This is the kind of mental formula that's going to allow you to make a point in a board meeting. It's going to allow you to speak impromptu. You have to have something in your head that allows you to connect the dots. Heather Brush was trying to deliver her message points. It doesn't work. You have to connect the dots for people. It has to be, here's the problem. Here's our proposed solution. Here's the results we could achieve together. Problem plus solution equals result. That's classic storytelling. And we want you to think about how you can use that to create more context, more completeness in how you discuss your issues. And when you're in a board meeting and there seems to be a lack of progress, check yourself and say, okay, wait a minute. Do we fully understand the problem? Do we have some metrics here? Are we remaining true to our vision? It's all about that student. Are we remaining true? Does this solution keep us true to our vision? And do we have the kind of results that we can use as proof points, measurable proof points for what we're creating? That's what Mark did. He gave you proof points. So do you have all 3 pieces? And in a board discussion, if you don't, stop yourself and say, hold on. We need to make sure we've got all 3 pieces to make the best decision for the public. And going back to what I said earlier, 75% of your effectiveness happens in the first 15 seconds of what you say. So are you leading with the most important idea? Are you leading with the idea that speaks to the student we have yet to serve? Are you doing it in a way that is an idea, not a message point? Once you learn to do that, you're going to see an incredible different level of communication. And we're going to do it today. Number 4, comparisons. When Mark was speaking, he was proving my point. What we remember are comparisons. That's what people remember from their discussions. I remember, that's what I remember about all of you. Highest test scores in 20 years, 2 to 1. You don't see that in other parts of the country. Technology that rivals TD Ameritrade. I remember that because it's a comparison. And that's because that's how we're taught as children. Children in the classroom are taught through the power of comparisons. Johnny had 6 apples, Mary had 7. So your brains are wired for comparisons. So that's why in any presentation, in any comparison, and what Erin and her colleagues will always quote is they quote the comparisons. Because the comparisons are what help people understand whether they want to support an issue or not. So that's why journalists are always looking for the comparisons so people can make an educated decision. So you want to make sure that when you're speaking in comparisons, there's the comparisons to the value for the student. Not comparisons that are defensive, but comparisons that speak to the value for the student. We're going to help you with that today. People remember comparisons. People share comparisons with their friends. It's what they'll tweet when you're giving a speech. They'll tweet the comparison from a speech. And people buy based on comparison. So we want you to be able to speak to that. And when you're in your board discussions, if it's just a lot of words and you're lacking the comparisons, help each other find those comparisons. Share experiences from the schools you visited to have those comparisons. And you know what, Mark? The comparison of how you transform a student's life, there's nothing more profound than that. But it's a before and an after, is it not? And then finally, it's owning it. This is not an issue for this group. You asked to be a board member. You had to show the community that you're capable of doing this. You own this story, and I love that. Stand up and own it. But also speak from the point of view of the parts of Omaha that you're closest to. From your school visits, the people you meet. Bring their point of view to every board meeting so that together we cover all aspects and all points of view. Bring that with you and own it for them. Own it for them as well. But in today's world, sincerity and authenticity is critical. We see too many manipulated messages coming out of our administration in Washington. It's really difficult to figure out who to trust. We want to make sure when we speak about what we're doing to serve those students, that we're doing it in a way that really engages the audience, create momentum, offer one for all. Which, if we go back and look at why you were able to pass that bond referendum, it's probably because of your outreach in the communities and that you brought people into the process, I'm going to imagine. So what we're going to give you today is a framework, a new way of you articulating the things you want to teach. A framework that allows you to connect the dots and create a story for your audience, an experience that they want to share. I want people to say, you should have been at the board meeting last night. It was so interesting, and I learned so much. That's what I want people to say. So we're going to give you an infrastructure that's going to allow you to do that. And it's not just telling stories. I mean, there's a place for that in your repertoire. It's creating a story with your audience every time you speak to them, creating an experience together. Just like they do when we're in Silicon Valley, we work with a lot of startups. That's what they do when they're launching a new product. They create a story in the room during the launch presentation. Caleb, let's introduce them to Hannah. I think this is a great way for us to come to terms with the 5 principles I wanted to teach about being a teacher, why before how, and the importance of creating a story with your audience.
The next story we like to show is the story of Hannah, and it's a bit more emotional than the first clip we showed because it's about a little girl, it's about children. And Hannah was born in South Korea without a windpipe, so she couldn't breathe, speak, or eat on her own. And there's really not much you can do for that type of a disease. So her parents heard about a hospital in Illinois that was willing to do a somewhat experimental procedure using her own stem cells. So we know when stem cells comes up, it can be quite controversial. So her parents decided it was worth it. They flew from South Korea to Illinois, and in the meantime, because her story was so unique, it caught wind at the Today Show. So the Today Show sent Meredith Vieira and a big camera crew to interview everyone involved to really understand Hannah's story. And as you'll see, the story really turned around once they were showing the interviews with the doctors, because the doctors were really teachers. They were the story makers in this story, and they took out the controversial element and told her story in a way that really made Hannah into a hero and a pioneer, rather than the story of an experimental procedure.
Back now at 10:43 with a medical breakthrough. This morning, surgeons at the Children's Hospital of Illinois will announce a first-of-its-kind surgery on a child, and it's not without controversy. Here's NBC's Meredith Vieira.
Here we go. See? Look at that.
She's the radiant little girl whose sparkling personality has always defied the rare deadly disorder she was born with.
Oh, Mr. Sun, Sun, Mr. Golden Sun. They said you can't do anything for your daughter. We get phone calls from the hospital, and I just, is she dying? It was like a nightmare.
Born with no windpipe, Hannah Warren was kept alive for 2.5 years by a tube inserted from her mouth into her lungs. She spent her entire life living in this neonatal intensive care unit in Seoul, South Korea, unable to breathe, talk, swallow, eat, or drink on her own. But last month, she was flown 13 hours to Peoria, Illinois, where she has just become the first child in the world to receive an artificial windpipe grown with stem cells from her own body.
This is the page turning in science. You know, this is like first organ transplant. This is like penicillin. We're turning the page in medicine. This little girl who was a prisoner, and now she has a chance that she's going to have a relatively normal life.
The pioneering operation was performed 3 weeks ago by an international team of surgeons at the Children's Hospital of Illinois. Lead surgeon Dr. Paolo Macchiarini of Italy had made transplant history before. In 2011, he gave this cancer patient the world's first bioartificial trachea, made from a plastic scaffold that was seeded with the man's own stem cells. But Hannah was his youngest patient yet, and he's a dad himself. Made the 9-hour operation especially challenging.
When it comes to children, it's big. Very hard.
Well, in that moment that Hannah's in the operating room, in a way, does she become your daughter?
No, she becomes the most important person in that moment in the room to care about.
Because no donor organ was used, it virtually eliminates the chance of Hannah's immune system rejecting the transplant. And already, the stem cells from her own bone marrow are changing her body to become airway cells.
That's like magic. Over a 4 and a 9 day period, those cells have already become airway cells. They change.
In that moment, when you saw that those cells had done what you were hoping they would do in the trachea, how did you respond?
I was very, very much touched. In fact, I cried.
But the field of regenerative medicine, which for decades has been promising a future of ready-made organs built in the lab, is still controversial. Critics say the science is too new, questioning whether an operation like this is too experimental.
But you're dealing with a lot of naysayers.
So, Tom Starrs, when we started doing liver transplants, the first 79 patients all died. Everybody said it was nuts. Okay? Well, was it? Christian Bernard, when we started doing heart transplants, everybody threw rocks at it. You're looking at the beginning.
And for Hannah's family, her dad Daryl, her mom Young Me, and older sister Dana, it was nothing short of miraculous.
It was a time when we didn't have hope. We never dreamed that any of this could happen, and it did.
Wow, very incredible.
For her to be a pioneer and a driving force for this to happen, it's really cool. That's my girl.
today, Meredith Vieira and Lucy.
If someone asked you in the hallway, did you catch Hannah's story this morning? What kind of things would you say? Do you recall some of the comparisons the doctors used?
I didn't even really think about the stem cell. I mean, they made it so personal
right.
about her. She's a pioneer. The comparisons between the first doctors doing heart transplants, liver transplants, that kind of brought it home for me.
It's hard to
It's
argue
all
that.
new.
Right, exactly.
And I think that's, if I be so kind, I think that's very interesting, Tracy, because that occurs in when people come to your meetings as well. What you walk away and remember are the points of comparison. You don't necessarily remember all the details, but you remember the points of comparison. So even though the journalist covered the story in a complete way, talking about the controversy, which was what we need, obviously from any piece that's put together, what you tend to remember as an audience are the things that really are more relevant to your life, those points of comparison. You need to think about that and how you speak as communicators, because that's what people will remember. That's what they will walk away with.
The other thing I appreciated was Meredith seemed to know what she wanted them to say when she asked the question, oh, when you operate on her, is it like your own daughter? And the doctor stood up for himself and said, no, it's not. It's like the most important person in the world. I really respected him for that, for really listening, being an active listener to the question and giving his true, authentic thoughts on it.
And the thought that was pure to his mission in life, which is to help every child. So instead of thinking he's talking to Meredith Vieira, a lot of people would be pretty nervous about that, he stopped himself and took a breath and said, no, back to the person I'm thinking about right now, the child I've yet to help. And there was a purity of that throughout the entire piece. And they were determined. Yes, science is tough. It is tough. But we are persevering for that kid we've yet to help. And a lot of different personalities at that table, but weave it all together, they all had the same purpose. They all had the same purpose. There was a compassionate Italian. There was kind of the gruff old guy who's been around a while. There was a nice guy who's probably the mediator in all their meetings. They all had one purpose. They were all rowing together. Yeah, right? So there's a lot to be learned from the Hannah story. It is about the one child. It is about speaking in comparisons. It's about, as leaders, defining this moment in time. We're turning the page on medicine. Today we're going to ask each of you to define this moment in time for Omaha Public Schools. As leaders, you've got to give people the compass. They got to know, where are we right now? You got to define that compass like Mark did a few minutes ago. And you want to also make sure that you're visualizing things that people are afraid of. Stem cell scares the heck out of me. But when he visualized it and compared it to other medical breakthroughs, I said, oh, carry on, carry on. So that's what we learned, putting the why before the how. Remember that in today's world, we are what we feel. So we want to do a little exercise, a little branding exercise. Words are so very important. We want each of you to take a pen, or maybe do it in your memory, and we want you to give us 3 words that really define how you want everybody in this community to feel about the value and how you approach education at Omaha Public Schools. For example, we already have the word diversity. There, you got one, you only need 2 more. So would everybody take your pen and write down 3 words that, in your opinion, define how you want people to feel about this brand moving forward? I'd like to hear the words so that together we can create maybe a fresh new vocabulary. 3 words to define how you want people to feel about Omaha Public Schools. Again, for Apple, I would say happy, creative, inspired. What are your 3 words? Think about what makes you special. Think about why you are a model for urban education. It's like Jeopardy. I'm Alex Trebek. She had a friend on Jeopardy. He said, it's so hard to hit that button. You're like, oh, really? Oh, yeah. Like the semifinals, huh? All right, we ready? Okay, I'm going to go counterclockwise this time. So Matt, did you do it?
Oh, yeah.
Matt, lead us off. Here we go.
I put confident, functional, and innovative.
Confident, functional, innovative. Louanne. Excellent. Good start.
I put quality, perspective, and then I put grit or
Grit.
perseverance.
I
whichever
love
one.
grit. I love that word. That's fresh. Amanda, did you use diversity or did you come up with another one?
I did.
Okay.
So that was one. Equitable and then unique.
Love it. Mark? Fabulous. Lace?
I didn't use diversity because I knew Amanda was going to. So innovative, transformative, and whole child, which there's a dash, so it's one word.
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. Mark? Compassionate, trustworthy, and innovative. Great. Tracy?
I did groundbreaking, culturally aware, and powerful.
Powerful. Love it. Shyvana? Beautiful. Yolanda?
Excellence, progressive, equitable.
Oh, I love it. Perfect. Did you do it, Winnie? Did you play the game? I did. Okay.
I'll talk about, I put committed, diligent, and I had diversity.
Love it. Megan, did you do it? Play the game? No. Okay. Wonderful. And I love the consistency. And I love that those are forward-thinking words. And I love that those are some of the very same words that we would hear in top technology companies, the innovators of the world today, because that's the world that we're creating for our students so they can succeed, not just in school, but succeed in life. Bravo to all of you. I would like to hear you use those words today. Let's weave those into your vocabulary. And then you will really be living your brand every single time you speak, even in your board meetings. So very important. Because again, you're creating a future that people can't yet see, and you have to use the kind of words that help people understand it and visualize it. That's how Apple gets people to stand in line for 4 hours to buy a device that people have never seen before. My mother stood in line for an iPad, still doesn't know how to use it, but she's in the iPad club. So you have to speak in a way that inspires people to know that you share those common beliefs. Because again, ultimately, you are the teachers. You're not the students taking the test. So on your sheet in front of you, I have given you the 5-step methodology. I'd like to review that with you before we conclude this first part of our day. First and foremost, we look to you as board members to really always be constantly seeking the need behind the need. So we can do assessments to see where we're at with grade points and where we're at with population. But when you're out there really listening to the people you serve, that's when you really unveil the need behind the need. What are the challenges our teachers are facing? What are the challenges our parents are facing? You know, what are the challenges because you work in a corporation? What are the challenges you're seeing in jobs of the future? All of you bring to the table right now insights that if we did this separately, if we did this without teamwork, you wouldn't be able to get the right insights. So we look to you to always bring to the forefront the need behind the need, the voice of the community. And I know you do that really well. If we can keep finding the need behind the needs, it allows us to be progressive. It allows us to be that model for urban education. It allows us to do it in the most personal, relevant way possible. It's making sure that, and I keep reiterating this point, but it's really important. When you speak, do not speak from your own perspective, telling people what you're not. Do not speak just from the perspective of the board. Always, everywhere, speak from the point of view of the people who elected you to be board members, the people you have yet to serve, pretending they're sitting right in front of you every single time to have the right tone. It's a me to you jump. Let's lighten the load a little bit. Let's show them kind of a fun clip to illustrate this, and let's go to our town. Let's go to Chicago.
Absolutely. So Terry and I are both lifelong Chicagoans, and about 20 years ago, the Chicago Bulls were on a really hot winning streak. And every time they would win a national championship, they'd have a huge rally in Grant Park. So thousands of people would come to see their favorite players and all the coaches give a speech. And this specific year, the Bulls had just won their 5th national championship. So there's 3 players that were chosen to speak, and each player represents one of the 3 pronouns we have up there. So the first guy who gets up, he represents me. He's kind of a joke. He's covered in tattoos. He's not someone you probably would invest money in. And he talks all about himself. The second guy represents we. He really only talks about the administration of the Bulls. He's kind of the spokesperson who memorized a few points in the limo on the way over. And he actually still works for the Bulls today. But the third guy, who many call the master of marketing, he learned at a young age, perhaps when he was at North Carolina, how to be a good marketer at all times. And as you'll see, he knew that his audience was not in that park. His audience was sitting at home watching, wondering what the value of buying a season ticket might be. So we'll watch Me to We to You, and I think you'll probably already know who all the 3 players are.
Oh, Mark, I don't know.
We'll
Let's
see.
Oh, you got the first one right. We got 6, we never got 7. So what Michael Jordan understood, again, some say this is instinctive, is he understood that every time you speak is a chance to create growth. It's a chance to create growth, and it's a chance to help visualize for the people you have yet to serve. If people see a place to be a part of your life, to be a part of a cause, be a part of a project, you create upsweep, not conflict. So he understood that early in his career. And he also understood you got to have the magic formula. You got to get it in the first 15 seconds. Hey, Chicago, I know you work 8 hours a day. Wow, Michael Jordan understands me. We're giving you a solution, 2 hours of entertainment. Maybe I should go to a game. And most importantly, we're giving you a sustainable result. You can carry your civic pride everywhere you go. This press conference was in June. Michael would not be back on the court until October. How to keep people thinking about your brand when it's baseball season and you play basketball? Well, when you plant seeds, we love to talk about seeds when we're working with farmers in Nebraska. When you plant seeds in the mind of your audience, those comparisons, those verbal pictures, when you put something in my mind that I'm going to see in my life every day, I feel like I'm a part of the issue. I feel like I'm a part of the issue. And if people feel they're a part of the issue, a part of the solution, then you're going to get a momentum going. And we're going to show you how to do that today. Step 2 is the need to speak top down. Again, some of you have educational backgrounds that have trained you to put the conclusion at the end. And that's why sometimes you get misquoted, because journalists are not trained how to take notes. I had 3 of my 5 kids go to the University of Missouri. I've got 5 journalists in my family. And they're not trained to take notes. So it's really hard as a reporter when you're interviewing someone. If they're not putting the most important thing first, it's super hard to keep up. And that's why sometimes unintentionally you get misquoted. I don't want that to happen to you. So take a breath. And when you are answering a question, whether you're on the podium or meeting with the journalist after the board meeting, make sure that you always take a breath and try to put the most important point first and then build upon it, not the other way around. This is also really important, again, when you're speaking in public, so you can put some context around an issue. Your doctor doesn't start to treat you without first telling you whether it's going to hurt or not. If he did, you jump off the table. So just taking a breath and starting with that most important point makes a huge difference in your affect on an audience and will help you with this kind of discipline today. It's also a great way to write your emails. A lot of people delete email based on the subject line. So make sure that when you're responding to emails, you always rewrite the subject line so it's more valuable than when you receive the text. Very important to do that. Step 3 is the need to have comparisons. So there are 3 different ways you can do this. And again, I can prove this with the Hannah story. With the Hannah story with NBC News, I can tell you this as a former ABC News journalist, we'll look at hours of tape, but each person gets about 8 seconds. And that's okay. You can do a lot with 8 seconds if you do it right. So there are 3 different ways that we can package your comparisons. Number 1, they can be numeric. data points. Number 2, they can be historic, defining this moment in time. We're turning the page on medicine. Or they can be visual. She was a prisoner in her own body, now she can lead a normal life. So we want to show you how important it is to think about putting these into comparisons so that people can really know the value of the point you're trying to make. So you can help the journalists with the kind of content they need for their articles. And most importantly, so you can be a teacher. This is what teachers do. Let's tell them about Malaysia 370.
Malaysia 370 went down in the Indian Ocean, and there was so much mystery and confusion over what happened and where the plane was. And in the meantime, Terry and I were called to Boston very urgently to work with the company that made that underwater robot you might have seen on TV that was going to search for the wreckage of the plane deep down miles under the ocean. And we were there to work with their CEO. He was an engineer by trade. He had never spoken with media in his life, and CNN was right outside the window waiting to interview him. So he was trying to memorize all his message points, but he was worried that since he's a scientist, they're used to sharing their conclusion at the end, and that he would give data points and he'd be misquoted. And he didn't want his technology to be blamed for the fact they couldn't find the wreckage of the plane, because the search was so daunting. So we took all of his numbers and we plugged them into a comparison, and here's what we came up with. We had to search an area the size of Texas that's 2.5 miles below the sea surface. It's pitch black down there, and the pressure is like a Cadillac Escalade balanced on your thumbnail. Sure enough, he delivered it to CNN beautifully, and then we saw other media and people around the world using this comparison because it so clearly painted a picture of just how daunting the search was. And we know they called off the search a few months ago, and his technology is never a part of the explanation of why they couldn't find it.
So that's, and obviously the engineers vetted this before he used it, but that's the power of a comparison. And what it really does, again, which I think is so important to all of you, if people can understand the problem, they're going to feel more like they're a part of the solution. And you get more, you have deeper relationships and more support, and it really eases the collaborative process when you talk about things the way people can understand them. Number 4 is to have one core theme. Warren Buffett doesn't really change his investment philosophy every time he buys a new company. He's true to who he is and what he believes in. We want you to do the same thing. We want to make sure that as board leaders, you are always true to the reason you ran for this office. It's all about the child. It's all about the student. It's all about preparing the students for life. So we want to make sure that even when you're getting tough issues or when things change, you have that constant, that one core theme. People tend to remember 5% of what they hear, and they have to hear it 5 times before they remember it. So we really encourage you, the things you shared with us at the beginning of the meeting, those are the most important things of our day with you together. Once you know how you want to articulate the idea behind the value, you want to be true to that every single day, every single meeting, every single conversation, just like Warren Buffett. And then finally, what you do with that to make it relevant is you find ways to prove it, and you prove it in a way that's relevant to the people you're speaking to. Again, I would imagine as you go from school to school or go from neighborhood to neighborhood, the needs may change. And it's so important that they know that as board members, you each represent those local needs, and you come together to make sure that everybody is getting the solutions they need. So it's really important every time you speak to a different audience that you're really relevant in your support material. We're in Omaha, we talk about Warren Buffett, but we're in Silicon Valley, we talk about Mark Zuckerberg. So you always want to make sure that you're relevant to the people you're speaking to, so together they see a little bit of themselves in your conversation. And Mark, you're so right. One powerful story can be so amazing, but you need data points. It's not just the stories. You've got to have data points. You've got to have the metrics, and you've got to have the testimonials, and you've got to have the examples. But this is so rich, and every time you go to a different school, you're coming home with more support material for what we need and what we're creating. We look to you as the board members to bring that to every board meeting, to bring that to your media interviews, to bring that to your conversations. You're such an amazing bridge, but it's got to be relevant. So that's my methodology. It's pretty simple. It's problem plus solution equals result. Lead with the most important idea. Speak in comparisons. Be true to what you believe in. And pretend that always sitting in front of you is a person you have yet to help. So we're going to give you one last media example, because what we're leading towards is a model that we call creating your master narrative. And this is the model we're going to use to help all of you to figure out what is your platform all about, how do you handle tough questions, how do you orchestrate a conversation. We want to start with that most important point first and make it a significant sentence. We're going to call that your anchor statement. And again, what you told us at the beginning in terms of the idea you want to teach, you're already there. You already have it. Each of you have it. We're going to help you shape it a little bit, mold it. You're good. You're good to go. Who have you talked to lately? Be clear in your outreach in the community. And be clear in your perspective as a parent. Be clear in your dedication to what you're doing. Let people know that. Define the dilemma in a way that gets to the need behind the need. Not the perceived problem we're having, but the need behind the need. Give me a solution that's sustainable. Sustainable solutions. And back that up with some comparisons. And again, when you're bored and you're discussing the issues, make sure we're not missing this in the discussion, because that creates the healthiest outcome. Outcome, not output. So here's the last example. Ken, I'll introduce it if you don't mind. And I'm using it because it comes from Nebraska. There was a woman in Nebraska who was driving her sick child to the doctor. Her mom's at the wheel and her child's in the back seat with a fever. Her cell phone rings. Mom thinks it might be her pediatrician, so she tries to get her phone while she's driving because she's really concerned about her child. And unfortunately, as she struggled to find her phone, her car veered into the next lane and she hit another vehicle. Well, the man in that vehicle died. Now, the mom and son were okay, he died, and his family was super upset. They filed a lawsuit, they pressed criminal charges, and they found a lawmaker who wrote a bill that would have required all of us to pull over before we use our cell phones. So this gets the attention of the national media. And they want to talk to the company that made the phone. That was Motorola, my client at the time. Motorola said, you know, this is really an industry issue, so we're going to have you talk to someone in Washington. Okay. So I had 20 minutes to prepare a gentleman who was the head of the U.S. Cell Phone Association. And I emailed him this model. And I said, don't be defensive. Be a teacher. We believe that when the spotlight is bright, the story has to be right. That's why today is so valuable for all of you. When the spotlight is bright, the story has to be right. Today we have to figure out, what is that story? So here's a story that he shared on national television via satellite. This is our last example.
We are joined now from Springfield, Illinois by State Representative Robert Bogelski, who's sponsoring legislation in that state that would restrict cell phone use by drivers. Joining us from Washington is Thomas Wheeler, the president of the Cellular Telecommunications Industry Association, and I appreciate both of you joining us. Mr. Wheeler, let me get you to respond to that piece. Here's a very tragic case. A woman reaches down to get her phone because she dropped it when she's expecting a phone call from her doctor. An accident like that occurs.
I agree with Ms. McGill. I mean, that is a tragedy, and no phone conversation is that important. I think what it is important to recognize, however, is that the wireless phone in the car has been recognized by safety experts throughout the country, police departments, national government agencies, etc., as one of the great safety tools, because you can use it to report accidents, you can use it to save lives, you can use it to stop crimes, you can use it to bring help. 98,000 times a day, somebody uses their wireless phone to summon help. And so what we have to do is we have to help people understand that when they get behind the wheel, driving safely is their first responsibility. And the call can wait, and you can use good judgment just like you do in other things when you're behind the wheel.
So 2 weeks later, the legislator dropped the bill. How are you going to pass a bill when this guy just said you should be using your phone as a safety tool? So what he had in front of him, his story, his template, and he just had bullets. Lacey, he didn't have a script by any means. Scripts don't work. They're not authentic. But he had some bullets to remind himself of the order. Putting what you want to say in the right order is what's key in today's world. Connecting the dots in the right way. First of all, he started with the most important point. No phone call is worth a life. Can you argue with that? No. And it was a simple, short, declarative sentence. Then he backed up with credibility, which is what all of you should do. I tell you that as someone who has spent 2 weeks meeting with law enforcement experts around the country. Now I understand why I should trust him. Here's the problem. Boy, we empathize with this family. This is a terrible situation. However, we don't want to create even more chaos. So here's my solution. It's very simple. Use your cell phone as a safety tool. And by the way, people do it 98,000 times a day. 20 seconds. And you know what happened to me? When I went to work that morning and I saw somebody on a cell phone in her car, I said to myself, oh, I wonder if she's one of the 98,000 using her phone as a safety tool. And if she's not, maybe I should. So when you put that kind of comparison, that kind of visual in somebody's mind, when you give them a way to be a part of the solution, not only do you potentially save a life, but you create more unity for the things that are most important for all of us in life. And that's how it works. So, there are your best practices. There is your model. There is the outline we're going to use to create a platform. As we work together, and we're really looking forward to that because every story is unique. We want to make sure that you know what your story is all about, Because again, when you're in a board meeting, when you're out in the public, when you're speaking to the media, make sure that you're true to your story, that you're really capturing what people really care about in every single neighborhood, but you're taking us forward. You're progressive. You're speaking to the student you have yet to serve, and that's exactly what he did. He was speaking to the person he has yet to help, and it was pure, and it was simple, and it was enlightening. Do you have any initial questions for me before we call a conclusion? And I know, Lacey, I know you'll be concluding the meeting. Any other questions for me? And of course, in your individual session, we'll be able to talk about your questions as well. But anything else you would like to bring up? Yes, Mark?
Just explain the one-on-ones.
So in your one-on-one, we're going to do a few things. We're going to maybe do some role play as if you were doing a media interview and talking about some of the issues that are going on right now, and show you how to use your platform as a way to keep people focused on what's most important. And then we're also going to have each of you, using a worksheet, develop a 1-minute elevator pitch for an audience that you're going to be speaking to the next couple of weeks. So it's a chance for you, Mark, to practice with us and for us to give you some personal insights that we can only do in a one-on-one session.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate this. And obviously, I feel like just with this presentation alone, I've learned a lot from you. And thank you both.
Yeah. Thank you. We look forward to working with you as well and given the good work that you're doing in your communities. Any other questions? Lacey, would you be so kind then as to call the meeting to a close?
Yep, and I also want to thank you both for coming today, and thank Monique, because I know this is something that we have been working on getting scheduled for 5 or 6 months now, and coordinating the calendars of a lot of people. Sometimes it just takes a while, but I know I'm looking forward to my one-on-one session, and I hope everyone is.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So this workshop is adjourned at 10:44 a.m.
Thank you. Oh, that's important.
I have the menu up too.
Sitting here all day starving.
You're so kind. Well, you're super kind to think about that. Okay. So, Karen, do you know what you're having? Or?
Yeah, but